I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside. It's so comfortable, and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off-road. The guy managed the group. He was like, what are you doing in this beautiful car? I'm like, I'm going off-road. He's like, are you sure? Because you can use one of ours. And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, no, we're going to do this. And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability, as well as its robust interior, are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
These days, we're all investors, trying to be smart with our money despite our worst impulses. But at iShares, we believe that deep down inside of every investor is a better investor. One that's just waiting to be let out. Explore iShares ETFs and insights and let your best investor out. Visit iShares.com for more information.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show. Today on the James Altucher Show.
I'm so glad you're listening to my podcast, and I really try every week to do the best job I can to provide information that could make you better. But there's also many other really great podcasts out there, and I want to share an episode with a podcast called Real Good. It's a show that started last year at the beginning of COVID, and it highlights nonprofits doing work to help with the pandemic. But the big message of their last season was that most of the problems people are facing in COVID weren't new when COVID hit. They're intersectional problems concerning race, class, gender, and a lot more. The second season is out now, and it's broadening out a bit to focus on the people fighting systemic issues that COVID's highlighted. And I think those issues are huge. We saw it just in the fabric of our economy. We're such a great economy, the U.S., and I really do believe that. But let's not forget, out of 128 million workers, 55 million of them went unemployed at some point during 2020. The world is sort of sewn together by a very thin thread, and understanding what could fall apart and how we could still do good during those times of disaster is very important. And that's what this podcast, Real Good, is ultimately about. So I let them put an episode on my podcast. You're about to hear an episode about mental health, and we're going to talk to the Black Mental Health Alliance, the director of that. If you like what you hear, you can listen and subscribe to Real Good wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Real Good by U.S. Bank, a podcast about helpers.
So one of the passions that I developed was breaking down myths. And so even right now, I call myself the Chief Myth Buster.
I'm Faith Salie. This show was born out of the coronavirus crisis. In our efforts to understand where work needed to be done to help communities in need during the pandemic, we learned that the issues they were struggling with didn't crop up during COVID. They're long-standing concerns with roots in racial disparity, socioeconomic opportunity gaps, and so much more. We're here to give you a chance to meet those who are fighting against inequality. They're people who span a wide range of fields and enact very different missions, but one thing remains the same for everyone you're going to meet. They're helpers. They're doing real good. This week, our guest is Dr. Jonathan Shepard, a board-certified psychiatrist, the chief medical director of Hope Health Systems, and the president of the Black Mental Health Alliance. The way we think about and treat mental illness has progressed quite a bit in recent years. We've cut down on the microaggressions that reinforce stigma, and we've increased access to telehealth services that break down the barriers associated with visiting a therapist in person. It might not seem like a big deal to many of us, but for a busy parent who can't get someone to watch the kids, something like video calling a therapist makes a world of difference. It's worth celebrating, but it's also worth acknowledging that we weren't really clearing a high bar, and there's still a long way to go. When it comes to mental health, we're still getting bogged down in the easy conversations. Sure, there's plenty of stigma surrounding mental health to break down, but why aren't we addressing the cost barrier for mental health treatment or making sure people can walk into a therapist's office and see someone who looks like them? Well, Dr. Shepard is. Dr. Jonathan Shepard, if I were seeing you as a patient, would I be calling you Dr. Shepard or would I call you Jonathan?
You call me Dr. Shepard.
Okay, well, I'm sure today will be very therapeutic for me, but if I may, I'm going to call you Jonathan. Is that all right?
That's fine.
And I want to start out very superficially and tell you that you appear exactly how I would want my psychiatrist to appear. You have on glasses, you have on a tie, but it's the cardigan. I feel like it's the cardigan that clinches it. I feel like I can tell my feelings to you. You just have to change out of your dress shoes into your sneakers and we'll get going.
All right.
So can you tell me about where you grew up?
So yeah, I grew up in a suburb of Chicago. Chicago is home for me. The suburb is named Homewood, Illinois. And I spent pretty much 25 to maybe 30 years there before moving into the city for medical school. So I'll probably say about 25 years I grew up there. And it's a small suburban town, primarily Caucasian. I was the only Black male in many of my classes throughout elementary and junior high school.
Wow. How did that shape you?
Oh, it shaped me tremendously because I had to know who I am and who I was at that time. I was one of the people who really tried to befriend people of different races, ethnicities. I had a lot of Jewish friends. I attended their bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs. So I was one who really understood the importance, even at that young age, of how to be able to have different friends of all cultures. It was quite a mix for me, I'll be honest, because being raised in a Black family and having a strong faith-based commitment within my family that was primarily African-American. So when I got around my Black friends in my churches, that they would tell me that I spoke differently, or I would act differently, I would dress differently, I would have on the cardigan that many of them were not wearing, and so so there was a lot of back and forth where people would say I did not sound Black, I didn't look Black, I didn't look the part. So I was teased quite a bit, and that didn't feel good. I'll be honest with you, but it really shaped me to the person who I am today, to be comfortable in who I am, and not to allow people to define me based off of my skin color.
It's so interesting. I don't know how early you decided to go into mental health and psychiatry, but to think of you as a kid, already like a burgeoning therapist, already knowing how to navigate communication with very different kinds of people.
Absolutely. You know, even as I look back at it now, you know, my past day was really shaping up who I am today. And that's why I tell parents today, you have to be so careful how you shape your children, because you never know what they're going to become later on in life. And so it really is incumbent upon our parents to really allow your children as many experiences as possible so that they'll know how to be able to interact with different types of people, whether they look like you or don't, whether they believe like you or don't. It really has shaped my career. And I must say, I'm thankful for two parents who really raised me right.
Did you have experiences with knowing people who sought help with mental health as a kid? Did you know anybody who went to a therapist? Did you know what a psychiatrist was?
I knew what a psychiatrist was. I honestly didn't know too many people who sought out mental health services. You have those people within your families or people who who may have had depression. I can remember very clearly where someone within our faith organization, she actually had a stroke. And I saw how the stroke changed her demeanor. She used to be very calm, very quiet. And then when she came back, her personality was like a 180. She was very bubbly, friendly. I was like, I remember as a kid, like, what happened to her? Thinking to myself, like how does someone change? And so when I look back at it now, based off of my acquired knowledge, I look and see how medical issues such as a stroke or such as other things that could have happened that affect the brain changes people. So I remember that very clearly, not being able to explain it at that time, but knowing that something was off or something is different. And then I also saw that with my own grandmother. My grandmother had Alzheimer's disease, and she had to come and live in my home or in my family's home for 3 years. So I watched the deterioration of a woman who helped to raise me, not even know who I was by the time that we had to, unfortunately, put her into a skilled nursing facility. So again, those experiences helped shape me to know that mental illness is real, even though I did not know people who were going to receive that treatment.
Yeah, I'm sorry about your grandmother. And you must have also watched as a child how the decline of your grandmother affected your own parents' mental health.
And it did. You're absolutely right. I saw how it changed my mother. That my grandmother was my mother's mother. And so my mother was, at the time, she was raising me and my brother, handling her own mother. Then she was also pursuing her own degree, her own doctorate degree. And
what?
So, right.
I love your mother.
It is amazing. Actually, during the pandemic, my family, we created what's called the Shepherd Empowerment and Training Institute. Training and Empowerment Institute, had the words reversed. And so my mother was one of our trainers. And so she started talking about her experience during that time. And I actually forgot. I was like, my mouth was like, I forgot about all those things that she went through.
Okay. No offense, Jonathan, but I'm going to skip talking to you as a therapist. I want to talk to your mom.
Yeah, I'm telling you, she balanced all of that, even having to travel sometimes several miles to do her internships and her practicums in order to be able to get her doctorate in education. And so I remember one summer where she literally had to go back and forth. Sometimes one way, it was 2 hours because we lived up in Chicago, but where she was getting her degree was at Illinois State, which is down about 2 hour drive one way. And that one summer, she had to go down there every single day and come right back home. And so I forgot about all these things. So yeah, I'm cut from some good cloth here.
Yeah. One of the themes in this show that I get to do is learn people's origin stories. And man, it won't surprise you, but people's parents and their grandparents, they're so important. They're so meaningful. And the most extraordinary people come from extraordinary parents and grandparents.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm thankful for them. My grandmother was an extraordinary woman. She lived to the age of 86 years old, was an entrepreneur in her own right. People on the block knew her as the person to go get candy, or back in the day, they called freezer cups. Basically, it was like slushies, but she used to create them. And so she was her own business owner in the day. I remember that. So we would come over there. And so we'd be the ones taking the money from the people. And yeah, she did quite well. Even people tried to mimic what she was doing and never could outsell her. So that's the entrepreneurial spirit.
I love a business plan that involves slushies. So you make your way through University of Illinois for med school, and you get to Johns Hopkins, where you were enrolled in the Fellowship of Childhood and Adolescent Psychiatry. What was the reaction from friends and family when you said, "Yeah, I'm going to be a doctor, and this is the kind of doctor I'm going to be"?
Well, let's just say it was a mixed response. Because some of my colleagues, they talked about me and teased me because they said, "Shepherd, you didn't go to medical school to become a psychiatrist." And so they looked at psychiatry as kind of being the lesser of the specialties. And so that actually did play on me. When I went into medical school, I wanted to become a pediatrician. I always wanted to work with youth and with children, but I didn't know that it was going to be through psychiatry. And in medical school, I took to the behavioral sciences. I took to the different neurosciences that dealt with the brain development and just the biology of the brain. So I love those type of subjects. And I really just studied those even more so than others. So when it came time to choose, my friends were like, "Well, why are you going into psychiatry?" And, I really had to battle through it and said, this is where I feel comfortable. Again, it's about knowing who you are, being comfortable in the decision that this is what I'm called to do. This is where my passion is. This is where my purpose is. And so once I let go of what people were saying, things just started falling in place. Yes, I was not the smartest in medical school. I had many of my friends who were smarter than I. But you know what they say, the person who still graduates last in medical school, what they call them? They call them doctors. So now I was not last. All right, I want to put that out there. Right? Be clear about that. I was not last, but I was not at the top either. And so once I let go of it, things just started falling in place. People started asking for me. They could see the passion. I ended up staying in Chicago for my residency. And I really was comfortable in staying in Chicago, Faith. I really was just like, okay, I'm going to do my fellowship in Chicago. But it was when I traveled to Johns Hopkins, I was able to interview, and I could tell the interview went well. And they could see that I was passionate about what I wanted to do. And I told them when I walked in there, and I think that this was really what got their attention, I told them what I needed. I said, if I come out here.
This sounds like my first date with my husband, but go ahead.
Hilarious. So I told him what I needed. That's why I said, I'm coming out here. I don't have any biological family out here, but I would need support systems. And I know what support systems I need to be successful. Doctors are smart people. They're intelligent people. So yes, I know you already know that I have the intelligence to be here, but I want you to know I know what I need to survive here. And that is to have a faith-based community, which I had already established here in Baltimore. And I said, I want to make sure I have connections. So when things get rough and hard, I know who I can lean on. And that, I believe, really sold them as to allow me to go from the middle of the pack in medical school to the #1 hospital and program in the country.
I hear this theme throughout your life that you got teased. You got teased when you were a kid, right? For maybe not being Black enough or not talking the way people expected you to. Then you get teased, presumably by your peers, saying, "What kind of doctor are you going to be?"
Yeah.
You know, I as I was researching to talk to you, I read a story of a Black psychiatrist, a woman who said that she encountered in her community when she said she was choosing to be a psychiatrist, of people saying, "But that's not a real doctor. That's not why you went to medical school. How are you going to show up for the African American community if you're being that kind of doctor?"
And she's absolutely right. And that's what I was teased about. And even not just from my peers, but having such a strong faith community. So, there were people who said, "Well, why are you going to psychiatry? You believe in God. God can answer all of your fears. He can take care of all your mental problems." And so I would literally get even teased there. And so one of the passions that I developed was breaking down myths. And so even right now, I call myself the chief myth buster.
Dr. Chief Mythbuster.
Dr. Chief, absolutely. Because I know that is part of what I am here on earth to do. That is to break up stigma, to inform people. And let me tell you, when I became comfortable in doing that, things began to shift. People began to listen to me. They began to understand what the difference is between a psychiatrist and a psychologist and a therapist.
And a minister.
Right. Absolutely. So, you're right. That is one of the things that I've been able to encounter, the teasing, but I've been able to turn it around. And for those who are even listening, people will, talk about you. They will tease you, but that is only to help make you stronger, to make sure that you are sharpening your skills to know why you are doing what you're doing.
So you get to Johns Hopkins, you choose to make Baltimore your new home. How did you become linked up with BMHA, which is the Black Mental Health Alliance? Clearly, that is part of your purposeful path.
Absolutely. So I became involved with the Black Mental Health Alliance as a fellow, and I began attending some of their events. And then kind of membership dropped off because their executive director transitioned. And so I became involved again when they hired a new executive director, and she asked for me to be a part of the board. But we clicked, and not only did she ask for me to consider joining the board, she said, we need a board president. And unfortunately, we're in a point right now, 2014, where we need to revamp the board. And so I was part of that team that helped to reignite the fire under the Black Mental Health Alliance. And so in 2014, I worked alongside her name, Jan Desper Peters. I want to make sure I give a shout out to her. And so it was through her we began developing, laying the foundation, laying the groundwork. And then I'll just say this very quickly. Freddie Gray was murdered in 2015 in Baltimore, and many people know about that. And that was the pivotal point when the Black Mental Health Alliance stood up in our Baltimore neighborhoods and said, enough is enough. And we were here to be able to provide the mental health care that our community needed. I'll never forget, I was leading out a forum. And that was the first time I ever led a community forum where people were very aggressive towards me. And it really grew me up very quickly. And I had to be able to answer the people's questions with transparency, with humility, and with some type of force, because people were blaming other folks. And I said, listen, this is not the time for us to be blaming others right now. We need to heal as a community. And so that's how my upbringing, if you would, got started in the Black Mental Health Alliance. And we've continued to build on it ever since then.
Thank you for saying Freddie Gray's name. It's good to remember those names.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we're going to delve further into Black mental health specifically, but to sort of set the tone for us, can we talk about how prominent mental illness is in the U.S.? What do we consider mental illness?
Well, mental illness is a true disorder where it is a malfunction of the brain. That's what mental illness is. And so a true disorder is when a person is no longer functioning properly. So in my talks, I talk about how distress is different from disorder. All of us as human beings will be distressed. Everyone encounters distress. But if you stay distressed long enough along that line or continuum or along that line of journey of being distressed, you will then hit the pit stop of disorder. And that's when mental illness was set in. And disorder is when you're not functioning properly. I'll say that again. And 1 in 4 Americans experience mental illness. So it is quite prevalent.
There is no one alive who doesn't know someone experiencing mental illness, just statistically.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you don't, that's because either your head is buried in the sand or they're not telling you.
Yeah, that's right. Or you're in denial, right?
Or in denial.
So when people are dealing with mental illnesses, how likely are they to seek treatment?
Well, it depends on where you are, unfortunately. So there are so many barriers to receiving treatment, and it really has nothing to do with race or ethnicity, because in our country, healthcare is tied into employment, and which is really backwards. Healthcare is a right, not a privilege. And so we have many people out there who are working part-time jobs just to make ends meet. But because they're working so many part-time jobs, they don't have healthcare benefits. And then if they do get the healthcare benefits, such as through EAP, employment assisted programs, they don't cover enough for the mental health issues. How is it that you're going to deal with depression and you only get 5 sessions? What?
Yeah. Talk fast, I
right,
think. Right? Yeah. I have a statistic here that says only 43% of people reach out for treatment or care. This is according to the National Association of Mental Illness, which frankly and sadly seems high, given what you just said. That's not quite half of people who reach out for help, and the burden is on the person who is already experiencing disorder, right?
Right, exactly.
So the hurdles are indeed, as you said, employment, right, and the insurance problems and the cost. Mm-hmm. What else do you think is a hurdle?
Well, stigma is a hurdle, and that's one of the things that we've seen over the last really 5 years, and maybe a little bit more than that, where stigma has been continued to be reduced as more people are transparent about the different mental health stressors that they've had, especially through the pandemic. Let's think about that. Michelle Obama even came out and talked about how she had low-grade depression. So when you have certain notables coming out talking about their battle with depression or the battle with mental illness, it really has helped in reducing some of the stigma. Think about Prince Harry. He's, and I believe even his brother has talked about mental illness and raising awareness of mental illness across the globe as they work to end that stigma. And so that is what we need. We need people who will stand up and talk about that. Another barrier is healthcare disparities. So even if you want to go look out and what I mean by healthcare disparities, accessibility, for clinics, accessibility for people to find out a person who can help and provide mental health care. So if you're living in a neighborhood that don't have healthcare clinics, how are you going to find a mental health professional? Or in relation to the personnel, what I mean by personnel, we don't have a lot of doctors. We don't have a lot of mental health professionals who are wanting to treat, or I should say professionals, healthcare professionals who want to go into mental health, who are not wanting to treat mental health, mental illnesses. So those are some of the other obstacles.
When we treat mental illness, what kind of ripple effects does it have?
When we treat mental illness, what type of ripple effects does it have? Again, we have to look at what mental illness that we're treating. You think about, like I mentioned to the audience, to your audience earlier, we think about dementia. Dementia is a mental illness. The ripple effect is great. It's great not only just on the person who's suffering the dementia, but the family who's caring for them. I mean, again, we talked about my mother went through where I figured, if I think about it now, she probably went through a depressive episode because of just she watched her own mother struggle with recognizing who she is, recognizing who her grandchildren are. So the cost is heavy. And unfortunately, the cost is probably even more so on the family than it is on the person affected by the illness. So there's a lot of emotional toil. There's a lot of financial toil also, because a toll, I should say, because it really does cost to be able to care for someone. A lot of mental illness is chronic. So when you think about chronic diseases, you think about how often you have to continue to make sure that you're getting the healthcare services that are needed. So the toll is high.
So we shared the statistic of only 43% of people seeking help for mental illness. And the statistic for Black Americans is 30%. So the big question, Jonathan, is why do you think Black men and women are less likely to seek out mental health treatment? Because surely that's your mandate at the Black Mental Health Alliance, right?
Right. Absolutely. And there's so many different obstacles. And so we already talked about some of those. Number one is cost. So one of the things I read up that I really helped to now break up this myth is that Black people don't want to seek out mental health care. That's just not a true statement. Number one reason is because of cost. They can't afford it. So even though they may know that they need it, they can't afford it. How can they afford it if they don't have the job? Healthcare is attached on to their employment. If they're unemployed, now they got to go to the emergency room for services. So we have to make sure that we understand that we don't get so caught up in stigma. Stigma is real, but the real true barrier is cost. And so let's deal with that. And we have to deal with that in legislative bodies on how we can reduce these barriers. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, I think even people for whom cost is not an issue, and that is an issue for most, it's the cost of time. It's figuring out whom to talk to, how to get there.
Right.
And you already need help. Like, it all seems overwhelming.
It is. It is so overwhelming. So, right. It's especially even here in Baltimore, where mass transportation is not a premium. Even though the different ideas that have been floated around, they've destroyed them. And so you can't get around from the west side of Baltimore to the east side of Baltimore. So how am I supposed to be able to get the prescriptions? How am I supposed to get the mental health care that I need? Because now transportation is a barrier. Stigma, go ahead.
You have mentioned faith a lot, and clearly your faith is very important to you. That must be a tricky role that faith and spirituality plays in the lives of some of the Black people whom you're trying to help, right? I'm being careful with my language because you can speak to this better than I. But there's an idea that you already articulated. Someone might say, why do you need to see a therapist? God's here. God will help.
Right. Or just pray it away. So you're absolutely right. So spirituality, faith is a large component of most African Americans or most Black people. That is where we find our solace. That's also where we find a lot of our social interactions. So if you think about it, it was within the faith-based community during the times of slavery where people felt like they were important. This is where their self-esteem was built. And so a lot of that has carried down. And again, it still is a place where we feel important, where our self-esteem is built. So if you can imagine in the pandemic when the church doors were closed, where did people go? They didn't, 9/11 hit. Everybody was running to church. The different other crises that occurred. But now when the pandemic hit, you couldn't go to those places. So people were really left out kind of high and dry and really stuck. And so that's why it really has some devastating effects, which is why I speak to people and let them know that we have to be careful on how much we put into, I'm kind of going to backtrack what I want to say. We have to be strong in our faith, yes, but we have to be careful that we don't knock down people who are using mental health treatment along with their faith. That's what I want to say. There is room for God, a pastor, and a therapist. They don't operate in conflict. So
and is that a message you find yourself having to share with people over and over?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so when I say that, people say, "Oh, I didn't know that they all three could exist." Absolutely. You can have your faith in your spiritual being, God, for me, the pastor, the person who's the spiritual leader, and then you have your therapist. I mean, it's just like when you look at finances, you need to have a good attorney, you need to have a good certified public accountant, and you need to have a good doctor. There'll be all these things need to be in your repertoire to have.
Is there also a problem of mistrust? Because you've said the state of African American mental health is one that is progressing toward understanding the importance of mental health, but still has to dispel cultural mistrust. So for non-BIPOC people listening, what is the mistrust that exists for Black communities?
Well, the mistrust occurs because there are not people who look like them when it comes to providers. So when you're going in to talk to someone to help them understand what's going on with you, so there's a misinterpretation. I can use a case for an example. When I was in residency training, a Black woman was going to a white psychiatrist, and she was telling the white psychiatrist, I hear God speaking to me. The white psychiatrist thought she was psychotic and put her on an antipsychotic medication that was giving her major side effects, was hurting her. She came to me. I understood what she was talking about. We stopped the medication. I mean, it just...
Because what she was talking about was what? Being prayerful?
Right. Something that related to her faith. God speaks to me, he tells me what to do, So I understood what she was referring to. She wasn't psychotic. She wasn't delusional. She was not having bizarre dreams or delusions. I should say dreams, but bizarre facts or beliefs. She was expressing how she was raised. And so those are examples of why there's a lot of cultural mistrust. There's a lot of history too. You look at the different instances that have occurred where Blacks were abused, where Blacks were misused, where Blacks were taken advantage of. You think about the Tuskegee study where Blacks were purposely not provided treatment to see the effects of syphilis. You see where Black women had hysterectomies without their approval, just to figure out how a surgeon could better their ways in learning how to remove the uterus from women. That's crazy, and people may not know that did happen to Black women who were institutionalized. There's so many atrocities that have occurred. And again, those are so some of that is historical, but then you think of present day examples also.
Oh my gosh, I love these clothes. Mizzen and Main, that's Mizzen and Main. It really is the most comfortable work clothes. Travel clothes. I had to travel this whole week. I'm traveling for a week and a half, and I just took Mizzen and Main clothes with me. Close out 2023 in style with comfortable, breathable, packable, and machine washable pieces from Mizzen and Main. As you wrap up your year-end goals, enjoy a Mizzen and Main dress shirt that you can wear confidently. I like that they've very, very just nice, solid colors. I don't really like to get all fancy in patterns and everything, although they do have some pattern shirts, but very comfortable clothes, stretchable pants. It's just super comfortable, but they look professional, and you can wear them casually or professionally. I like some of their flannel shirts or untuck shirts. I love untuck. I never tuck in. So again, whether you're shopping for a special someone or giving yourself the gift you really want, I just buy myself gifts. Mizzen and Main is the perfect gift for any guy who works, travels, and cares about looking and feeling great. As you could tell by my many photos across the internet, I care about looking fantastic. I'm practically a model. And let's be honest, every guy loves to look great. So again, shop now at mizzenandmain.com and save 20% when you spend $130 or more using promo code James. That's promo code James at Mizzen and Main, Mizzen and Main.com. You know what I love about fantasy sports is that even though I'm not going to be a great basketball player or a baseball player or a football player or whatever, I feel like I get to participate and make decisions and use my knowledge of these different leagues or these different sports to compete. So it's like I can pick my team or I can pick my favorite players and I could use my knowledge to make predictions and maybe even make money. So with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League on Prize Picks. This is a league created specifically for combo projections that include two or more players from different sports or leagues. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz, who's also been a guest on this podcast, and I've been a guest on his? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries for some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Look, Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. What? So I love playing it. I love anywhere where I can use analytical ability with my interests to demonstrate some skill and maybe make some money. And I like the game-like aspect. I do wish they had chess as a category on prizepicks.com, but I'll settle for what they've got. Maybe I should make my own fantasy chess league. But in any case, I love Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/James. Use code James for a first deposit match up to $100. That's the easiest $100 you're ever going to make. So that's prizepicks.com/James and use code James. Daily fantasy sports made easy. The future of learning is definitely online. Like, it's such BS that you have to spend $200,000 or take $200,000 in loans and go to some fancy school when it's useless. It doesn't guarantee you a job. Most employers, including me, do not care about degrees or grades or anything like that. We want to care that you love what you're doing, that you know what you're doing, in some cases that you have experience or that you're willing to learn. But people in general love learning and are curious. Like, the key to success is curiosity. And I think masterclass.com is the perfect model for online learning. I'm really happy they're sponsoring this episode. If you're going to give a gift, give the gift of learning. Masterclass makes a meaningful gift this season for you and anyone on your list, because both of you can learn from the best to become your best, from leadership to effective communication to cooking. Let me tell you some of the classes I've taken. I've taken comedy from Steve Martin. I mean, can you believe I can take a class from Steve Martin on comedy, or Judd Apatow, my favorite comedy director? I could take an actual class from him on writing. Wolfgang Puck on cooking. Dan Brown on writing, or Judy Bloom, who's been on this podcast, on writing. By the way, Wolfgang Puck also has been on this podcast. It's such a pleasure. I try to take classes all the time from masterclass.com. And whether you're watching Masterclass on TV or listening in audio mode in the app or on their site, the quality speaks for itself. It's like these Masterclass instructors are your own personal mentors that are going to help you reach the next level. How much would it cost to take one-on-one classes on comedy from Steve Martin or on chess from Gary Kasparov? You just wouldn't be able to do it. But it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. With a Masterclass annual membership, it's $10 a month. Memberships start at $120 a year for unlimited access to one-on-one classes with all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. So it's not just $120 for one instructor. You get all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. Boost your confidence and find practical takeaways you can apply to your life and at work. And if you own a business or are a team leader, use Masterclass to empower and create future-ready employees and leaders. That's the real education in today's world. So this holiday season, you can give one annual membership and get one free at masterclass.com/JAS. JAS, of course, stands for the James Altucher Show. So right now you can get two memberships for the price of one at masterclass.com/JAS. Masterclass.com/JAS. Offer terms apply.
Shifting into the more positive, right? The steps we can take.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love for you to talk about something that you and your family has done that you call shop talks. Can you tell me what that is?
Yeah. So within the Black Mental Health Alliance, we've done shop talks, which has been in conjunction with Kaiser Permanente. We've been doing it for a few years now. And so that's when we go into beauty and barbershops and we allow customers to come in, the people from the community to come in. We have a keynote speaker who will deal with a particular topic and try to keep it engaging, not lecture style. And we talk about mental health issues that are going on within the communities. So, I'm looking over here now. One of the ones we just had this last week was Young Black Minds Matter. And we were talking about how to be able to release toxic stress, emotional pain, past trauma.
And this is in a barbershop or
Yes.
a beauty parlor?
Mm-hmm.
I got to know, are people getting their hair cut and their nails done while the conversations are going on?
I believe so. Absolutely.
That is the best kind of multitasking.
Absolutely.
And so what you're doing there is talking about absolutely meaningful things and meeting your community where they are. And making it easy, right? Making it easy to learn about health and reach out for help.
Right. And that's what we got to do. And we know that it's possible to do. It's not too much of us to go into the communities. They can't get to us. We just talked about those barriers. So we got to go to them so they can get the help. And so in doing so, it alleviates some of those pressures. It alleviates some of those worries. Black Mental Health Alliance has also taken on the role of being a supporter of emancipation, emotional emancipation circles, EEC, which was created through a person out there in California. I'm blanking on her name. I believe it's Dr. Grills. And so what this group is, it's a supportive group, kind of like group therapy, where Blacks come together to discuss toxic stress, talk about racial trauma. And it's just Blacks. So it's a safe space for Blacks to come to talk about the different issues that they're encountering within their neighborhoods. And so we do have one that has been continuing on actually since the Freddie Gray incident or murder in 2015. And so Black Mental Health Alliance has been the major supporter of that particular EEC.
I hardly need to tell you, we're all living through the time of COVID. You've said that you and your colleagues are working at absolute capacity, trying to treat as many people as you can and be accessible. It sounds like you might be working on the Sabbath some days, doing the Lord's work, my friend.
Right.
Can you tell me how access to telehealth services has shifted through COVID and how you've seen that change personally?
Yeah, telehealth services has really been a lifesaver for many of the patients and families. So we had to change really on a dime. And thankfully, we were already providing mental health services through telehealth. We just were not doing it at the rate and the volume that we're doing it at now. So we went from in-person sessions the week of March 15th, and then by March 22nd, everything was telehealth after we got that public health emergency where things were shut down. So all of our sessions during that time were all telehealth. Back in August, I believe, I started allowing people to come back in for in-person sessions, face-to-face. I'm primarily doing about 90% still telehealth sessions right now. But I do have new persons, new evaluations who come in, or for people who I have not seen in a year, I ask them to come in so I can get their vital signs and other things so I can see them, so I can make sure that I'm not missing anything that I could not see via a screen. But let me tell you.
Go ahead.
I was going to tell you, people's satisfaction is actually even better with telehealth sessions, which is very odd because you would think that it would be worse. But actually, people are loving the telehealth sessions. It's more accessible. And let me tell you, they take longer too, Faith. I Normally I see people in 30 minutes. People want to talk to me now. They see me. They're like, well, how are you doing, Dr. Shepherd?
Oh.
People were not doing that before the pandemic. It was like, how can I get out? They were scared to come to the office. How can I get out of here as fast as possible? But now people are asking you, how are you doing? How are you managing? How's your family? And then I get a chance to see inside their homes and see how they're living. And that actually adds a whole nother aspect to the care. So it really has been transformational.
I'd like to know more about that. Can you share maybe a specific story of how somebody you may have thought you knew has been illuminated for you because you can literally see inside their home?
Yes, several examples come to mind. You get a chance to see what the living styles and the living environment is for some of the families. You get the chance to see the different distractions that are occurring, going on within the home. You know that mom and dad are there, but you didn't know about this other family member that was living there, or a sister, or you even get a chance to see what they're doing when they should be in school, or how they're even, I should say the environment in which they're learning in. So everybody's doing, just about everybody is doing virtual learning for school right now. So some of them are in their bedrooms with all this no lighting and things. I was like, wait a minute, you can't learn in your bedroom like this. Oh, okay, no, I just, that's, they just kind of say, I'm setting the mood or mood lighting. I'm like, we can't have mood lighting for academics. So some of those people I've had to, help them to move to either the dining room table. But let me tell you, it's hard because what do you do with a family of 4 or family who has 4 children, different ages? They all need 4 different devices. Who has 4 different computers?
Yeah.
In a home?
Yeah.
Or people just to utilize for school. So parents were really, really struggling during this time.
Oh, my friend, you don't need to tell me. And I'm pretty lucky, Yeah, who's got the strength of broadband to support that, much less the mental support, right? Do you have you shared the story of the woman who was treated by a white doctor and who didn't understand that she was talking to God. Do you have any other specific stories you'd like to share that you think sort of illuminate how crucial it is for Black Americans to focus on their mental health? Maybe somebody, I don't know, your stories, but maybe somebody who came to you reluctantly and found his or her life turned around by shedding the stigma of approaching a psychiatrist.
Yeah, I'll just share this, and I'll keep it broad and short as possible. Children who come to me with ADHD and their parents are struggling about whether or not do they put their child on medication to treat the disorder. It really touches me each time that a child will come back and tell me, Dr. Shepherd, I can finally learn now. Their grades go from D's and F's to A's and B's. And these are Black boys and Black girls. I just had a session with a mother either Monday or just Thursday of last week. I can't remember now. But she was telling me how her child was below age-appropriate reading level for his grade. Now, he's far exceeding. He's at the top of the class. He's reading like 2-3 grade levels ahead of his peers. That's simply now because the ADHD is treated and now he can learn. Now he can remember what he was reading. He's not so easily distracted. Those are the stories that you don't hear about. But that is why I am in mental health. That's why I do what I do.
In talking to you about Black mental health specifically, it occurs to me, on this show, we talk about how people of color, it's given, they deserve equal access to housing, to education, to healthcare, right? Physical healthcare and financial literacy and entrepreneurship. And all of those things are not tinged with shame. And all of those things everybody agrees are empowering. And it's this step, it's what you do that needs also to be seen as empowering. Like I'm a person of color and it is only fair that I get mental health access, not something that should be whispered about. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And so again, that speaks back to the tenets I talked about, the PCWC.
Hold on. I wrote this down because I didn't want to forget. P, potential. C, being able to cope, right? Mm-hmm. W is being able to work and show up with your whole self for work. And C is community, offering something to your community. Is that right?
Absolutely. You got it.
I didn't want to forget that. I love that. PCWC.
You got it. So if I can help people to understand their PCWC, engage their PCWC on a daily basis, then I know that people are going to be living better. This is one of the things that I do every morning. I assess my potential. Shepherd, how are you dealing with the stresses that are going on in your life? Because we're going to have them. Are you ready to work? Are you ready to make a contribution? And when people really understand that, it really speaks to all facets of your life. And so we just got to make sure people are following through and then have the ability to follow through. I think that that's also important.
I love that your last name is Shepherd. You are so well named for shepherding a lot of lucky folks. I never like leaving a therapist's office. I could talk for days. So I have to tell you, I'm sad. I'm sad that our time has ended. And you know what? You didn't even make me cry.
Oh no, that's not my job. My job is that even when you are crying, let's figure out how do we turn those tears into some type of meaning to drive you forward.
I believe you. We're big criers in my home. Good. Crying's good. Crying's good.
Yeah, it is. It is. I tell people it releases a lot of the stress and a lot of the things that have been building up within inside of you. So yeah, a good cry is necessary, especially for men.
A good cry, and I'm giving you a good virtual hug too.
All right.
I am really, really happy and grateful I got to talk to you today. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Faith. I appreciate the conversation. I think it was insightful, and I hope it's impactful for all those who listen.
PCWC, my friend.
Absolutely.
All right. I guess I have to let you go. I don't want to, but I'm so happy to be connected, and this is a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much.
No problem. I appreciate it, and hopefully all the material makes sense to you, and hopefully I was able to, shed some light on this subject for your listeners.
Absolutely. Listen, take care. A lot of people rely on you. Stay safe. Right. Thank you. Workplace stressors affect every employee. Ensuring the people you work with have access to mental health treatment is in the DNA of work at U.S. Bank. We spoke to U.S. Bank's Greg Cunningham and Carrie Ackerman about the wide-ranging meaning of providing mental health services and the ways the work they're doing can truly save lives. We also spoke to Greg about an incredible initiative at the bank called Access Commitment that's aimed at closing the racial wealth gap. If we've learned anything over the course of the past 2 seasons, it's that intersectionality is key. And this has deep ties to our talk with Dr. Shepherd. So we wanted to share that conversation with you as well. So, Greg, it's wonderful to see you again. I think this episode actually makes you the most tenured guest in Real Goods history. So congratulations.
Thank you. I'm shocked that you've had me back so many times.
No, man, you're going to have your own podcast soon. I think it'll be called really, really good or maybe real great. I don't know. You're going to take it up a notch.
That's a scary thought, but I love the sentiment.
All right. We have a big, wide-ranging topic to jump into, which is U.S. Bank Access Commitment. So I want to hear more about it. I want to get a good sense of what U.S. Bank is doing. And it's this huge word, access, right? We've been talking about access for the last 2 seasons.
Yes.
Like I've heard you say access is education, right? We've said access is housing. Access is broadband.
Yes.
It's dignity, it's financial literacy. So in context of this initiative, what is the goal of access commitment? What's it trying to solve for?
It's creating a pathway to opportunity, Faith. And, we have talked about this a number of times. And I've we have this burning feeling that, there are so many conversations happening around systems change. And for us, it became this conversation about how do we look inward for systems change? Like, how did we need to be different? How did we need to collaborate and work differently? And as we thought about what system change we could have the most impact on, it felt like this notion of, the leveraging the core competencies of the bank in a way that made a real difference in people's lives was truly meaningful. And the racial wealth gap, which, we've talked about before, which is over $1 trillion, there's a 10-to-1 ratio in the household wealth of white families and Black families. And it's such a pervasive issue. It affects every single one of us as Americans. It hampers our economy. It hampers our ability to really be at full prosperity as a nation. And so for us, looking at that, it became this notion of how do we create greater access to capital for small businesses? How do we create greater pathways to home ownership for people and families? How do we create a platform for financial literacy so that we can ensure that kids and families are actually having conversations about wealth that weren't historically happening, that we could be a catalyst to help those conversations. And so it became sort of this company-wide initiative, and I'm proud to say that the entire bank is involved. Every single one of our business lines is touching the work in some way. But Access Faith is really our way of, the Access commitment is our way of living up to our purpose as an organization, which is about powering human potential. And what should be on the end of that sentence is for all. And, I like to think of, when you heal the deepest wounds, you heal the entire body, right? And so if we can fix things like the racial wealth gap, we will go a long way in helping to address many of the, what we, I'm air quoting, systemic issues that we talk about in our society and help us all thrive.
What you're saying, you said that inequity hampers all of us. And
yes.
Oh, Greg, if only that message could be absorbed by all of us. I mean, even, you're talking about society as a whole, but when I became a mother, I remember someone saying, when I became a mother twice over, someone said, you're only as happy as your most unhappy child, right? And so
yes.
goes our country.
Exactly. I tell people all the time, like those neighborhoods that we typically drive by and look out our windows and shake our head and, wonder what, those are actually your neighborhoods too. Those are our neighborhoods. That's our community. And when you feel that you're in community with others, their issues become your issues and they become our issues. And so that's the spirit of what this Access commitment is about. It's about, how we can all sort of lean into this incredible disparity that is a drag on our entire economy. Anywhere from 4 to 6% in GDP growth, has been impacted by this disparity over the last 8 years or so. And so we've all got a responsibility. And even if your motivations are purely selfish, there's benefit for all of us wanting to see these disparities lessened because it impacts all of our households.
Yeah, I like the way you and U.S. Bank are framing it, which is positive. It's this isn't shining a light on something negative in order to make people feel bad. This is, hey, everybody, let's shine a light on this and we all do better. It's rising tides, right? Rising tides lift all boats.
Yes.
So I think I heard you kind of break this down into 3 pillars, if I heard you correctly. It's access to capital, access to technical support, and to mentorship. Is that right?
That's a huge part of it. And here, let me say it this way. There are three real, I think, themes in the access commitment. One is, how do you help individuals and families in their ability to build wealth? The second one is, how do you help businesses grow and scale and create jobs, which creates economic vitality, which leads to more vibrant communities? And then the third part, Faith, was really thinking about our employees. So I'll share just a small example in each one. In terms of individuals and families, that is everything from the number one way to build wealth, or the way wealth gets transferred in this country, is through home ownership, right? It gets passed down from generation to generation. It is, arguably one of the most foundational way to build wealth in this country. Well, there is a huge gap in home ownership in Black and white communities in particular. And so we have this initiative called the DREAM Initiative, which is really going to help educate members of the minority community, and particularly the Black community, around the importance of building wealth. And that starts with not moving people into a mortgage, but it starts with understanding why building wealth is important and what are the necessary steps to help build wealth. So it starts with financial education. It starts with us partnering with organizations like Operation Hope. And I know you've had John Hope Bryan on your program. And they are going to allow us to have financial coaches in our branches. So people who are from these communities helping individuals in the communities answer their questions, understand what are the steps to take to build your credit score that will lead you to being able to qualify for a mortgage. So moving people into home ownership. In terms of small businesses, we're making a huge investment in community development, financial institutions, putting resources in their pockets so that they can make loans to micro businesses, those businesses that have less than 20 employees, those businesses who need loans of less than $50,000, those businesses who would never be able to get a loan at US Bank. We need to make sure that we get resources into the hands of those businesses because, as you know, Faith, as an entrepreneur, most people don't work at large companies. Most people work in small businesses. That is the backbone of our economy. So to the extent that we can get resources, and our access commitment is about an additional $25 million that we're making available to CDFIs to get in the hands of these small businesses, that's important. And then the final piece is our employees. And that is about how do we continue to lead and develop leaders who understand how to lead inclusively, which in the future, understanding issues of inclusion is not going to be an option, right? Like you're going to have to understand how to lead more diverse teams, high-performing diverse teams, because that's what our society is going to look like. And so part of what we've done is not only sort of accelerated our leadership development programs for all employees, but to also have leadership development programs that are customized to women and communities of color, and really expanding, how we've created more diverse pools for open positions and more senior positions in our organization.
Thank you for giving those specific examples. I have to tell you, we're talking to you for the final episode of this season, and you couldn't have brought it all together better. Finale. No, because we've talked about entrepreneurs, yes, right? We've talked about loaning, yes, and venture funds for people of color. We've talked about how housing can kind of be called everything, like the key to everything. And we've talked about implicit bias, yes, within the workplace. So you're very well cast and you learned all your lines. And I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you. I saved it all for the finale. I just wanted you to know, like, everything that we talked about, Faith, I was bringing it, saving it. We're actually doing the work now, yeah, which is to your point. Like it's actually come to fruition over the course of all of our conversations. So I'm thrilled to be able to share it with you.
Now, since you're so good at making things accessible to my not corporate, not banking brain, I would like you to talk to me about the trade and supply chain, right? So this can be a tricky one to nail down. It sounds a little jargony to me, but it's very impactful. So when you say you're offering supply chain assistance, what does that mean?
Yes. It simply means we're making cash flow available to small businesses sooner. So your business, you mail an invoice, Faith, to one of your clients for some services that you provide, and they'll send you payment terms of some sort, right? Net 30, net 60, sometimes net 90. So as a small business owner, you won't get your money for 60 days or 90 days or whatever the terms are. And that's a problem for entrepreneurs, right? Particularly for micro businesses, because you need your resources now. Cash flow is a critical issue for micro businesses. So what we do, Faith, is we actually go in and we purchase that accounts receivable from the small business. So they get their money right away, for a fee, but they get their money today versus having to wait 90 days for their money. So it's a debt product. But because the way that we structure it, the debt terms are actually based on the credit history of the buyer. So the large corporation, right? So you send an invoice to Procter & Gamble, right? So the terms that we're giving you is actually based on their credit history, right? And so it's a lot more affordable and a lot more efficient for you than if you had to go get a loan. So you're getting very, very favorable terms, and you're getting your resources today. So it's really aimed at helping to alleviate that cash flow issue that small businesses have, because you can't wait 30, 60, 90 days for your money. And so it's a way for us to get money in the hands of those businesses sooner.
This is a good time to introduce Carrie, who's been patiently listening. Carrie Ackerman, hello there.
Hi.
I'm
glad to be here.
I'm thrilled you're here. Can you tell us your job title?
Sure. So I am the Critical Assessment Response and Education, stands for CARE, an acronym, the CARE Team Director at U.S. Bank.
It sounds very necessary. It's got the word critical in it. What does that mean? What do you do?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. So I'm going to break it down in two. And I feel like I could talk about both worlds for hours. So we can pick and choose and go from there. So part of the team focuses on workplace violence prevention. So my small but mighty team, we are all trained in behavioral threat assessment and management, which is a scientific process that was actually pioneered by the U.S. Secret Service. To protect our presidents, foreign dignitaries. Now it's a process that's used to protect movie stars and our schools and why not our employees, right? So it's a process of collecting information, identifying information, assessing, and then essentially the goal is mitigating risks for targeted violence against our employees. So think about an employee who might be a victim of domestic violence, an employee who might be a victim of a stalking situation. We have, unfortunately, suicidal employees. And then there is always the concern around active assailant and active shooter scenarios. All of that falls within my world and my team. So that's half. And I can see Faith's face right now.
My jaw has dropped. I'm like, that's half? And I have 52 questions already, but go ahead.
And then the other half that I'm really excited about is actually taking on more to Greg's point, better be able to serve our employees kind of holistically. And that's really around that human resilience, right? So my team is also certified in mental health first aid. So we are looking more into trauma management, post-trauma management, stress management, coping skills.
What are some mental health awareness takeaways that you wish others across corporate America would enact in their day-to-day?
I think The easiest recommendation that I can make, and sometimes my team laughs about this, but managers have to talk to their employees. And I think this is really taken for granted in corporate America, especially now, right? In a pandemic when everyone or a lot of employees are working remotely and you're seeing your employees or you're just talking to your employees on the phone. It can't just be, I need this on Monday. It has to be, how are you doing? How is your family? What did you do this weekend? How are you feeling? Because the fact of the matter is, if we can get managers and colleagues and peers to understand, hey, this person doesn't sound like he or she normally sounds. I notice a change in behavior. That is when something needs to happen, whether it's talking to an HR partner, whether it's contacting my team, whether it's reaching, whether it's asking, are you okay? Something needs to happen. And I think that is at the crux of everything, is that we have to be humans to each other. We have to talk to each other, and it can't be, I don't want to talk to that employee because that employee's weird, or I'm afraid of that employee, or this is a really difficult employee and I don't have time for this. That's not going to work.
I love that, and this notion of compassion that Carrie talks about, and as leaders, we have to ask different questions of people. The one thing that I would add to what Carrie shared is, I also think, Faith, as leaders, we actually have to be more vulnerable ourselves. Like, we actually have to talk about our own struggles with mental health and anxiety, which gives other people permission. It opens the door for others. Like, we have to be human ourselves and talk about our own struggles and the things we struggle with, because that gives license to others to share as well.
Have you done that deliberately during this pandemic?
Heck yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Heck yeah. Because I have, a couple of people I'm really close to at work who, we have that kind of relationship where they ask how I'm doing, and I say, well, I'm not doing well. I'm not great. I need time away. I need some time. I'm struggling with anxiety right now. I have people that I can do that with. And so I have done that in a way to in some respects help other people as well.
Carrie, I was wondering, I know you have to honor people's confidentiality, but can you share any stories, a meaningful kind of success story of someone that you or the people you work with have noticed or reached out to, and because of that kind of family concern where you work, you've really helped them? I think anytime that my team receives an email that literally says, well, thank you, you've saved my life, it means a lot. Wow.
And that has happened more than once. Whether it's, helping a manager who jumps into a car of an employee who has threatened to drive it off a bridge, to talk through next steps, whether that's working with an employee who, was held hostage in a domestic violence situation. We've helped employees find tracking devices on their vehicles from stalking situations. The list goes on, and it's absolutely terrifying, and it's the most traumatic life events that someone can go through, and I am super proud to say that my team is there every step along the way to help them continue to be an employee at U.S. Bank. Yeah. And your focus clearly isn't just on being an employee at U.S. Bank. Y'all keep using the word human. Yeah, just feeling connected. You have earned that critical in your job title. Well, thank you. And if I can add one more thing, Faith, I know you asked about, what are some of the things that employers can really focus on with regards to mental health. The other thing really is that human resilience, right? I think, unfortunately, we're seeing a society of not really having resiliency skills. I mean, resilience isn't taught in school. It's not taught with an MBA, but there's absolutely ways to teach yourself to become more resilient. And I know within, some of the post-active assailant studies that are happening and things like that, we're finding that individuals who are really hardened, who don't have that resilience skill and that coping skills and the support systems and things like that, that's when we get into problems. So anytime we can really focus on how can we improve people's abilities to be resilient, to increase their coping skills, because when all of these stressors continue to climb and climb and climb with the pandemic and everything else that's going on, people's ability to cope decreases. And so as we increase that resiliency capability, that's going to continue to impact employers and employees and hopefully continue to keep our society as productive as possible.
I feel like we should bring it in for a group Zoom hug, but thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for listening to Real Good by U.S. Bank. If you like what you heard, listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. See you soon.
Hey, Brad, you know how Nationwide is more than an insurance company?
Yeah, they're one of America's largest financial services companies.
We get that in a song like business, life, retirement.
Or Nationwide's there to protect.
I'm kind of the jingle guy.
Not sure I agree with that.
Well, I'm not sure I like your hat.
Well, that would never fit on you.
Products issued by Nationwide Life Insurance Company or Nationwide Life and Annuity Insurance Company. The general distributor for variable products is Nationwide Investment Services Corporation, member FINRA, Columbus, Ohio.